Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I got an email from Anonymous, subject line, Sevens and Bookends in the Living Christ document. Hey, Jared, not sure if you noticed this before, but in the attitude of sevens, bookends, or bridges, and chiasmus, I thought this was interesting. If you look at the signatures on the Living Christ document signed by 15 prophets, there are 7 signatures before Elder Nelson, and there are 7 signatures after him. Let me pause right there. Yeah, that is kind of interesting. It really is. I'm not going to go through the sevens and bookends right now if you're new to the channel, but we've noticed all these like really interesting things with President Nelson, his style and incorporation of the number 7 and other numbers in his talks and social media posts. And chiasmus, which is like, my understanding is it's like a Hebrew poetic way of writing where you basically structure like a paragraph where everything points to the middle sentence. So like you have like a mirroring effect on either side of that middle sentence that all points in toward the middle. So, okay. So look, we're going to look at this along with a few other things. So it's going to be interesting, I promise. Okay, 7 signatures before Elder Nelson, and there are 7 signatures after him. Further, I thought it was interesting that obviously the ones before him have passed, but looking at the 7 after him, the very next signature is Elder Oaks. And the last signature on the document was Elder Eyring. So the first presidency now has a kind of bookend within the second bookend, if that makes sense. And you guys, if that doesn't make sense, we'll be looking at it in just a minute. It will make sense. Don't know if it means anything, just thought it was interesting. Also to note that the first presidency now, and including the president of the Quorum of the 12, Elder Holland, have all signed the 3 proclamations to the world: the family, the living Christ, and the restoration. Yeah, we're going to look at those as well. I've wondered if there is any significance to having 4 apostles being witnesses to these declarations, and only thing I can think of is 2 sets of 2. If by the mouth of 2 or 3 every word shall be established, then I guess having 2 sets of 2 may have some significance. I don't know. I'd be curious for your thoughts. Keep my name anonymous, please. Keep up the good work. Your videos are helping so many. Well, thank you, Anonymous. I hope they are. I hope they are. I do get some good feedback. Not all the time, but I do appreciate all feedback. Okay, so let's take a look at this. The Living Christ, the testimony of the apostles, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Before we look at the signatures, I just want to point out that in this document, it has to do with the turn of the millennium. That's when this was put out. This is the context. I don't know much more aside from that, why they decided to put this out, other than to highlight that maybe the turn of the millennium was actually really important. And I think it was based on things that President Hinckley had said. For example, he wanted to have 100 operating temples by the end of the year 2000, which ended up happening. It was more than 100, but they hit the goal of 100. So, but I have more I can show you. President Hinckley really seemed to think that the turn of the millennium was important. But anyway, this starts out as we commemorate the birth of Jesus Christ 2 millennia ago. Later on, it says, we testify that he will someday return to earth, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Isaiah 40, verse 5. He will rule as King of Kings and reign as Lord of Lords, and every knee shall bend, and every tongue shall speak in worship before him. Okay, so it talks about the second coming, and then there's another paragraph, and then the date of this document was January 1st, 2000. Okay, so first you have the first presidency, Gordon B. Hinckley, Thomas S. Monson, James E. Faust, and then after that, you have Boyd K. Packer, L. Tom Perry. I think that's this one right here. Yeah, L. Tom Perry. And then David B. Haight. And then Neil A. Maxwell. Okay, so this is, up until this point, this is 7. So you have the 3 members of the first presidency, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, and then at the time, Elder Russell M. Nelson, who is now our prophet, the president of the church. Okay. And then after him, you have Dallin H. Oaks. Okay. And then after that, here's the second set down here. And then M. Russell Ballard, Joseph B. Wirthlin, Richard G. Scott, Robert D. Hales, Jeffrey R. Holland, and Henry B. Eyring. Okay. So you have 7 before, 7 after. And the reason why is because it's done in order of seniority. I have this spreadsheet called Prophets, Apostles. And I think there's a couple things I have to fix at the beginning. I may be missing 1 or 2 from early church history. I'm going to have to double check. So this number right here may not be accurate. If it is, then President Henry B. Eyring is the 100th apostle of this dispensation. But anyway, it's done in this order, in order of seniority. We're going to come back to this in just a minute. Okay, so yeah, that is kind of interesting. Of this entire list that we just read, the only ones that are still living is President Nelson, President Oaks, right here, and then at the bottom, President Jeffrey R. Holland and President Eyring. So this is what Anonymous was referring to when he was talking about like bookends. So you have the entire list of people that signed. President Nelson is in the middle. And then if you take this like second half right here, you have President Nelson, President Oaks on this side, and then it ends with President Holland and President Eyring. That is kind of odd. It's interesting. This is a document that is highlighting the fact that it's the year 2000. It's a new millennium, and they talk about the second coming. So, okay. Yeah, my mind thinks like this. I know a lot of yours do too. That's probably why you watch my channel. If you don't understand this, then that's fine. Just please be respectful, because there's those of us that see something in this. It is interesting. 7 before, 7 after. That's just how it played out. Now, I do want to point out, because Anonymous was talking about the fact that you had all these prophets, seers, and revelators sign this. However, with the other documents, they did not sign them. It does say, for example, the Family Proclamation to the World, the First Presidency, and Council of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but there's no signatures at the end. Not that that's really that big of a deal, I don't think. And then you have the most recent one that was introduced in the April 2020 General Conference, the Restoration of the Fulness of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, a bicentennial proclamation to the world, the First Presidency and Council of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but there's no signatures at the end. However, I can confirm that for these 3, you do have the same group that are currently living. Presidents Nelson, Oaks, Holland, and Eyring. Okay. So yes, all 4 of them would have been in the apostleship when these were put out. Okay. They would have been apostles when this was put out, all 3 of these. So that is interesting, because then you might wonder, well, what happens when they pass away? Does that mean anything? It may not. I don't know. Now, we do need to clarify something. So this is from Church News. How rare a proclamation? A look at today's and the 5 previous proclamations in church history. So we should be specific with this. The living Christ is actually not a proclamation, although it's clearly important enough to where all of them signed it and they put this out to the church. I feel like it's almost like on the same level, but it is different from a proclamation. So you have the Family Proclamation to the World, and then you have this most recent one, the Restoration of the Fulness of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, a bicentennial proclamation to the world. And this article points out the previous 5 proclamations. I'm not really going to go through these, but I'll put a link for this article in the description box below in case you want to look at it, or you can pause the screen and just read these. But you have this one from 1841, another one, 1845, and then 1865, 1980. So that would be the most recent one before the proclamation to the Family Proclamation to the World. I'll just read the title of that. Proclamation from the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then you have the fifth one, the Family, a Proclamation to the World. And then this one, the Restoration of the Fullness of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, is the sixth. So another thing that might be interesting is if we have a seventh that comes out at some point. If we get a seventh proclamation, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to that because, well, it could mean completion. No more proclamations after that before the second coming. I don't know. Later on, beyond proclamations, it actually says up here, generally declarations. Okay, so declarations are different from proclamations. Generally, declarations and statements are directed at Latter-day Saints, while proclamations, so these 6, proclamations are meant to reach beyond the scope of church membership. Proclamations are directed to the world. So we've had 6 of those so far, and maybe we'll get a 7th. And then it has examples of other declaration statements. So for example, Declaration 1 has to do with plural marriage. Declaration 2 has to do with blacks in the priesthood. And then you have, I guess there was a period of time where Brigham Young and possibly others sent out epistles. And then you have statements, like Statement on the Origin of Man, a First Presidency message on world peace issued a month after the onset of World War II. And then finally, the living Christ would be a pronouncement, according to this. So anyway, okay. So that is interesting to note. So before we move on, we have 7 signers before President Nelson, 7 signers afterwards, as though to point to him. That could be, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. I have the feeling that President Nelson may be the president of the second coming, or at the time of the second coming. We'll see. Okay. Furthermore, in this second half, you have President Nelson and President Oaks right here together, and they seem to be a bookend with President Holland and President Eyring as the last 2. It's just interesting how that turned out. And these are the only 4 that are still living as of right now. Okay, let's move on from that. There's a few other things I wanted to point out. Let's go back to this spreadsheet called Prophets, Apostles. You can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. We've talked about this concept before, that while President M. Russell Ballard was still alive, you had this thing where when you look at the order of seniority, you have President Nelson, that was technically called first, although he came in with President Oaks, but President Spencer W. Kimball specified President Nelson first and then Oaks second. So President Nelson has more seniority over President Oaks. But you have this weird thing where it's almost like these 2, Russell M. Nelson and M. Russell Ballard, it's like their names point to President Oaks, because you have Russell M., and then after that you have M. Russell. It's like a mirror image, a chiasmus, however you want to think of it, a symmetry that points to President Oaks. And Sister Nelson, I tried to find it, but one time she kind of like talked about this fact. She was talking about the fact that sometimes people in the past had like mixed up President Nelson for President Ballard because the first name and initial are similar. But I think there's something to that. Call me crazy. That's fine. Don't actually do that. I'll block you. Just be nice. But you don't have to believe that. So anyway, it seems like President Oaks is being pointed to in this way. I don't know if that's significant or not. I guess we'll see. And then, let's see. I think this was the final like thing like this where something's being pointed to. A while ago on my channel, I was looking at President Nelson's talks. I can't remember why. And I was putting them, I guess, on this spreadsheet, I think is how it first happened. And I realized I was looking at his first conference as president of the church. That's what you see right here in these rows. This like these blue ones right here. This is his first conference as president of the church. And what first stuck out to me is that he didn't speak in that first conference until the priesthood session. So the Saturday morning, the Saturday afternoon go by, and he first speaks at the priesthood session. Later on, I was like, wow. And then he spoke a total of 5 times. That's a lot. Okay. His next conference, October 2018, he only spoke 4 times. And then the next one, he only spoke 3 times. But then after that, October 2019, it back up to 4. And then after that, April 2020, back up to 5. So you have this kind of like pattern here, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5. And I wondered, is there something about this talk right here that's in the middle? Is there something special about this talk? And boy, oh boy, yes, there is. This is a talk where you see something that you don't see anywhere else. I cannot find any other general conference talk by a president of the church or otherwise where we get just this very blatant warning like what we see here. So I'll show you what it is. Some of you already know, some of you don't because you're new. Okay, the name of the talk is Come Follow Me. There's so much I could say about this talk, but he talks about the fact that Paradise, California, had almost entirely burned previous to this conference. Okay, a place called Paradise. It was burned. He shows a picture of it, right? We know that there's going to be a great burning at the time of the second coming. So for people like me, that's kind of where my mind goes. We have a prophet who's like, look, a burnt down city, right? And he goes into this whole thing about where's my family? Where's my family? Because, well, this is my opinion, because when the burning happens, you guys, if you're living a telestial law, you're going to be part of the burning. That's the definition of the wicked, if you're living a telestial law. And so your family is going to be like, where's my family? Where's my family? Because you're not going to be there. You were living a telestial law. So don't live a telestial law. Live a celestial law. That's like your best assurance. So he gives this warning, he talks about this story about this guy. Where's my family? That's like what was on his mind. Where's my family? Where's my family? He talks about, we have this like romanticized idea that love is all you need to be with somebody forever. And President Nelson says, nope, that's a false hope. You need to be married, but beyond that, you need to go to the temple and be sealed. And beyond that, you have to be worthy of exaltation. And he makes that very clear. And by the way, he repeated this in the October 2023 General Conference. He repeated the same thing. I would take him seriously. Okay, and then later on, he talks about a guy that his wife was a member of the church. And he's like, oh, these changes are just too hard. I can't pay tithing. I can't do this. Please, after I die, will you have somebody, take my name to the temple and do the work for me so I can be with my wife forever? And President Nelson says, I have a hard time believing that temple work in this situation would really do much, because in mortality, you already knew the truth. You knew that the church was true, but you didn't make the changes. You could have done this for yourself. So how efficient is it going to be sure, yeah, we'll take your name to the temple, but is that really going to work when you could have done it yourself in life, in mortality? So lots of warnings in this talk if you want to stay together as a family. And then at the end, and this is the most chilling part, and you have to watch the actual video, listen to his tone of voice, his facial expression, his body language, the way that he pauses. He says, and this is, I think, what this right here, what this is all pointing to. Now, as president of his church, I plead with you who have distanced yourselves from the church and with you who have not really yet sought to know that the Savior's church has been restored. Please do the spiritual work to find out for yourselves, and please do it now. Time is running out. Time is running out. So it's been 5 years at this point. The April 2024 General Conference was 5 years from the time that he said this. A lot of us have thought about Samuel the Lamanite, how he gave a 5-year warning in the Book of Mormon. So, you guys, I would fix yourself right now. I'm talking to myself too. We need to fix ourselves because I feel like we're just being explicitly warned. We need to do that work right now. It's not too late, but we could be getting to that point. We'll just have to see. So do it now. Fix yourself now. Let's all, like President Nelson said, let's get rid of the old debris of our lives. Let's get rid of our favorite sins. Let's make sure that we're on the covenant path. Let's make sure that we're going to church, taking the sacrament, that we have a temple recommend, and that we're actually worthy of the temple recommend. Let's do that stuff. Okay. And then I just want to point this out. It's not something that like points toward the middle, but I'm just fascinated that President Nelson started his talk this way in the April 2024 General Conference. This was his last General Conference talk. My dear brothers and sisters, today is an historic day for President Dallin H. Oaks and me. It was 40 years ago on April 7th, 1984, when we were sustained to the quorum of the 12 apostles. I'm not going to go into a whole big thing right now about 40, but generally speaking in the scriptures, when there's a time, like a time frame that's like 40 days, 40 whatever years, usually it's a time of like preparation. And then after that comes destruction. 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and then comes the flood itself that destroys the wicked. Israel wanders for 40 years in the wilderness, preparing to possess the promised land. And when that 40 years was older, when that 40 years was over, then came destruction to the wicked that lived in the promised land. And we learn in the Book of Mormon that if they had been righteous, the Lord would not have destroyed them. That's something that Nephi says. But the people that lived there in the land of Canaan, they were wicked. And here you had a people that were ready to inherit the promised land. Destruction came. So when you hit a 40-year mark with something, after that, it seems like there's cleansing that takes place with important events like this, significant peoples, So you have these two very kind of unusual apostles that come in together, and it's been 40 years. On April 7th of all days, President Nelson and Seven, those two go together. I've covered that really well on the channel. And then for the footnote, he points out the fact, he says, I filled the vacancy in the quorum of the 12 left by the January 11th, 1983 death of Elder LeGrand Richards. Elder Oaks filled that which was left by the January 11th, 1984 death of Mark E. Peterson. So these two previous apostles passed away exactly 1 year to the day from each other on 1/1/1 of 1983 and 1984. There's a whole story behind this. Like there were a couple general conferences that went by because President Spencer W. Kimball was not well. His health was declining. He couldn't do it. And so it was an unusual period in the church. There was also a very unusual flood in downtown Salt Lake in 1983. And then they were called together in a small moment where President Kimball was in a moment of lucidity, and he said, call Nelson and Oaks in that order. But the two before them died exactly 1 year apart to the day on 1/1/1. And I say 1/1/1 because You should watch this video that I did. If you missed it, you should really, really consider watching this, because there have been a lot of like 11s, 111s, 1101s that go along with President Nelson, including the exact moment when he found out that he would become president of the church. I'm not kidding you. So I'll put a link for this video in the description box below. All right, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you, Anonymous. I really appreciate your thoughts. I think that's a really interesting insight. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.